This is the flag of Greece, but did you know that for a lot of its history it had another flag that is still sometimes quite popular today? Well, in today's video, let's find out about the Greek flag and its history. So of course we know the Greeks first in history from their very old history, going right the way back to ancient Greece and the city-states. Although at this time they weren't really using flags, particularly not in a national sense, nor was Greece ever really a unified entity at that point. We know, however, from the Greek period that hoplites would often use various designs on their shields, and in the Roman period we also know about vexillum being used, of course that being the derivative of the Latin word for flag, and therefore the study of flags, vexillology. Now later on, Greece would become probably the most important part of the Eastern Roman Empire, often also called the Byzantine Empire. And we know of one sort of flag that was used, or a standard, by the Byzantines in the later part of their existence. And that is this one, featuring a cross and what appear to be some kind of fire starters on their symbol. Now, we know that the family that used this, the dynasty, came to power in 1259 with Michael VIII Palaiologos. But we only have one depiction of what this flag looked like from around 1385 in a book of flags of parts of the world at that time. And so we don't really know when exactly it was adopted, nor do we have any surviving flags from the Byzantine period to look at. And of course, in 1453, when the Ottomans succeeded in capturing Constantinople, this flag would no longer be used in an official sense, as now the city and indeed Greece would increasingly fall to the Ottomans, and so their crescent moon flags. Having said that, however, there were Christian cavalry that were recruited throughout parts of what is today Greece, called the Sipahi, and these were allowed to fly under their own flag. And this flag was a white background with a blue cross, and in the middle of that cross there was an image of St. George slaying the dragon. Of course, the Greeks are mostly Orthodox Christians, and so St. George was very important to them, and they chose to have a cross on a background, and this will be an important theme for all of Greece's flags. Another flag was used by merchants in the Greek part of the Ottoman Empire, which was this red, blue, red bicolor flag. But in 1774, they were also allowed to fly the Russian flag or variations thereof as part of a treaty that was concluded between the Ottoman and the Russian empires. So, having said all that, where do the modern Greek flags come from? Well, actually in 1770, with the aid of the Russians, many Greeks revolted against Ottoman rule in an uprising that is sometimes called Orlov's Uprising, and together with the Russians they would unsuccessfully try to wrest control. And during this uprising, many of the Greek revolutionaries flew a flag that was similar to the old Sipahi flag, which had been banned in the 1660s, and it was a blue cross on a white background. And this flag was used, although ultimately they were unsuccessful, and so it never became an official flag of an independent Greece. However, it is important, not least because it has the two primary colours of all the Greek flags to follow, white and blue. So why these two colours? Well, there have been a lot of theories about why these colours represent Greece, and none of them are particularly convincing on their own, and there isn't really a definitive answer to give. One of the ideas behind these two colours being used is that they were used on the shield of Achilles, an old hero from the Greek heroic age who's famous from the stories of Troy, for instance, that he always had white and blue on his shield. Another is that these were colours associated with the goddess Athena, who would of course give her name to the city of Athens. More recently in history, there have been attempts to claim it as colours used by Alexander on his famous expeditions into Persia, although of course he is Macedonian rather than Greek, but this doesn't seem to have stopped the idea. And finally, some people say that, well, white and blue is simply the blue of the sky and the white of the waves, or the white of the cliffs of many of these Greek islands, and therefore they're logical colours because they appear in the natural surroundings of Greece. So really, you can make up your own mind about what you think is more likely. In any case, these colours would be very important to the Greeks. And in 1807, just a few years after some of those other failed uprisings against the Ottomans, there was once again talk of rebellion in Greece, and several of the leaders came together and created a new flag that could be used by the rebels, and that was this one. So instead of a blue cross on a white background, we here see a white cross on a blue background. So these two colors being very important once again. Now, this flag, as well as several other variations of white crosses on blue backgrounds, blue crosses on white backgrounds, and a whole host of others, would be used during the Greek War of Independence, as there were several sort of free city-states and rebel groups all fighting in a loose coalition against Ottoman rule. Now, many of these flags, as you can see, were sort of similar to the ones that had come before, and many of them had hearts and organs and other things on them as well. But eventually it would be the Allied intervention of several major European powers that would swing the favor into the side of the Greeks, that they would be able to get their independence from the Ottomans. And as this was the case, many of the revolutionary councils in Greece decided that they should put a face on of being a unified front and not scaring away the European powers by having all these quite radical revolutionary groups and militias that had formed their armies. And so they thought, we need to have one clear flag to show that we are one united, unified, controlled state in the sense of the other European powers at the time. And in 1822, they chose this as their flag, the flag that had been designed back in 1807 for the purposes of an uprising against the Ottomans. And this became the national Greek flag. Why this one and not one of the others, again, is not really known. Perhaps it's one of the more logical designs, it's one of the simpler designs, and looks a little similar to some of the Scandinavian flags that were being flown at the time. A cross is never a bad idea, particularly because they were very Orthodox Christian, and so they decided to go for this flag in the end. Now, they also had several other flags. One that was used by the Navy, for instance, or on the water, was different to the aforementioned one, which was used on land and by the army. And there was also a third flag, this flag, which should look incredibly familiar because this was the flag that was used outside of Greece itself in international settings. And it seems that this flag became very popular, even though it wasn't the official national flag of Greece inside the country. And we can see here in a photo from the 1870s that it was being used by prominent Greeks. Now, in 1832, this Greek republic became a kingdom when they got a king who was from Bavaria at that time, King Otto, who became the first king of Greece. And so to symbolize that there was now a kingdom in Greece, he added the Bavarian sort of crest and a crown into the flag. And a lot of the time at this time we see a sort of lighter variant of the blue, which was in favor. And this at the time was the naval ensign of the flag. And again, we had the sort of the larger white cross on a blue background being used as the national flag on land. Now, in 1863, there was a different line that became the kings in Greece, a different dynasty from Schleswig-Holstein, and so a young Danish man became the king in Greece. And so he decided to once again change the flag by adding a different crown into the center. This flag that was used, the crown being that of the royal family in Schleswig-Holstein, and so that was added to the Greek flag. Now, in 1924, the kingdom in Greece was abolished and the Second Hellenic Republic was announced. And so, you might have guessed it, they decided to get rid of all the crowns in the flag because they were no longer a kingdom. However, in 1935, the king was restored, and so they added the crowns back. But not for long, because in 1969, they decided to once again get rid of the crowns, and most importantly of all, they decided to switch their national flag from the one that it had been, the army flag, to what was until then the naval ensign, which is of course the design that we are more familiar with today. However, that isn't quite the end of the story, the twists and turns of the flags being used in Greece, because a short time after this, a military junta took over in Greece, and when they ruled, they actually favored a slightly darker shade and a different proportion of the flag, making it a much darker blue that was used in those years, spanning from about 1970 to 1975. And this was then the national flag of Greece until they were removed from power in 1975, when they briefly went back to the old Greek flag, so this one, but 3 years later they decided to change it once again to the flag that they have kept since then, which is the modern Greek flag. And that is the end of the story of the two Greek flags and the many times that they have switched and flipped and changed colours. And who knows, maybe in the future they'll change it again. But for now, this has been the story of the flags that were used in Greece and why they were used and why they changed at various points. This video was recommended by one of the subscribers who saw the video on the Italian flag last week, and I thought, you know what, this is a good topic to make a video about that might interest people. If you want to find out more about other videos about various flags from around the world, then feel free to check out the links in the description below, as well as the recommended videos. If you're new, don't forget, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Hit the bell notification, which lets you know every time I upload a new video, which is great because YouTube doesn't seem to do that anymore. And if you think I should cover the older flags of a different nation that I haven't covered before, then do comment in the comment section below, as I try and read as many comments as I can, and I will see if I can get around to making that video. Big thank you to the Patreon supporters for all their help and support, and to all of you guys for watching. And until the next time, I have been Hilbert, and this has been The History.